Hi. This week's conversation was on home. That saying, home is where the heart is true to a huge extent. And each of us comes to that in our own way. It's interesting that this particular week, when just before the conversation began, the fire alarm went off in the building I live in. And it's a very high screeching noise, and it was in every room of the house and in the hallway and all over the building. And it went on and on. I realized that I'm very sensitive to sound, and so my nerve endings were very much, and I was getting all wound up. And I realized I'm about to enter this conversation on home, and part of being at home is being able to do that in any situation. And so here it was with this loud sound and all this going on, and what was I going to do? And so I sat and I started to breathe, and I started to just be with the sound, and I started to meditate on the idea, the concept, the principle of home within me. And I found my nerve endings starting to calm, and I found that I could relax. It was a beautiful, beautiful feeling. So and it stopped just 5 minutes before the conversation started. And so I was able to share this in the conversation, that here we are about to have this conversation on home. And here was my immediate um, experience of that. Now, there were some who shared in the conversation that home is when you take your last breath, you go home. Um, but I feel it much more that home is a state of consciousness. There was a time I didn't feel at home on planet Earth at all. There was a time I felt very alienated from everyone and everything, and just felt like, Jesus, I don't belong here. And I don't feel that way anymore. I feel very at home here. And it has to do with feeling more at home inside my skin. But the more I feel at home here, the more I feel at home here. And I now live in a beautiful apartment. And so and I find that the apartment I'm living in is a reflection of how I'm feeling about myself. One of the things that came up around where we live right now was how expensive it is. And I reminded myself, when it came time to buy a new computer, I wanted a very light laptop. And as I went around and started shopping for them, and not wanting this, wanting to spend as little as possible, I noticed that every laptop I looked at used as its benchmark a Mac Air. All the PCs were saying it's as good as a Mac Air this way, it's not as good as a Mac Air this way. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, I deserve the benchmark. I'm on the computer all the time. I actually deserve the best one out there. And so even though financially there was a way in which I couldn't afford it, I couldn't afford not to. I didn't want to feel unworthy of giving myself the best, so I did. And I've been happy ever since, because the computer has done everything I've asked it to do. And I have never been as satisfied. In the 20 years I have worked with computers, I've never been as satisfied as I have been with this one, by not shortchanging myself and spending the extra money. And so, thinking about that, I thought of how much time I spend at home and how important it is to me not to chintz out on myself around that I am worth it. So we rented a place that was actually a little above our means, and yet I don't think it is. And because I have embraced this just the way I did the computer, and then the money appeared for that, I believe the money's going to appear for this apartment, and that's how Science of Mind works. For those of you who know about Science of Mind, how it works is what we embody, what we take on, what we feel worthy of, then manifests in our lives. And so I completely take on that this is home. And it feels like it, and it feels so wonderful to be here. I feel at home in the arms of my beloved. So it isn't just a place. Sometimes when she hugs me, I feel so at home. And I'm guessing that are those of you out there who feel the same about your pets. That 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 when you are holding your pet, it just feels like home. And so there are those who say, wherever you go, you take your home with you. You take yourself with you. And and even though that's true, sometimes a change of job, place, or scenery can support opening a portal into yourself that maybe you hadn't felt before, giving you some excitement that then you can grow within with. Because ultimately, you do have to look within to create home. But don't be afraid to try anything. If you feel out of place, if you don't feel like you belong here, then it is worth doing whatever it takes to gain that feeling of home. I know it was worth it for me. It's been so worth it for me taking on that sense of home inside myself. You know, in the end, of course, it's about self exploration. But whatever might help opening the heart to your deeper self, that place of home within you, is certainly worth trying. It's certainly better than doing nothing and living in what some call quiet desperation or feeling out of place and without a home. Do not live like that. Do not live like that. Do something. Rumi says, if light is in your heart, you will find your way home. The very center of your heart is where life begins, the most beautiful place on earth. You have within you your home. And once you claim it, it will manifest out here. The more I claim my home in here, the more it manifests out here in meeting my beloved and the life we are creating together in the home. This is what's possible for anyone who's willing to make that stand. That this is not an alien place. That in here is not an alien place. We have the ability to create our home. I urge you to do whatever it takes to create it for you. You have a great week. Next week's on Balance. Come join us.